Welcome to the first video in what I hope will be a rather lengthy series of videos that will show up on the channel from time to time, telling you all about polymer clay, some of the hints and tricks I've learned in my 30+ years of playing with this clay, and hopefully it will help you to be more effective in your polymer clay journey. So stay tuned and let's learn what this stuff is and how it works. All right, so we are starting, like I said in the intro, a new series of videos. I'm going to call it Polymer Clay 101. Now, I've got a similar series over on my 18-inch doll channel, but that one is aimed more for making the larger items that we make for the 18-inch dolls. I'm going to try and keep this more relevant to our smaller scale that we work with over on this channel. So let's start out. And by the way, I'm going to take you from the very basics, you've never opened a box of clay, to more advanced techniques in different videos. Today's video is just more or less, what is this stuff? What is polymer clay? Why does it work better than air dry clay for what we're doing? What are some of the differences? What are some of the safety precautions? And just some basic hints and tips that I've picked up. Let me say, I have been working with polymer clay for over 30 years at this point. So I've picked up a few tips and tricks along the way, I hope, and I want to share those with you guys. So I actually treated myself to a few new packages of polymer clay this week so that I could show you new packaging, some of my tips I've learned about opening packaging, and what this clay is like fresh out of a brand new package straight off the store shelves. This stuff was all residing in Michael's until yesterday afternoon. So I've got a variety of brands from what was available at Michael's. There are other brands of polymer clay out there. There's a few I'd love to try. There's a couple I don't think are really relevant to us, especially if you're new to polymer clay, and I'll talk more about some of those other brands in the blog post. So be sure and check the blog post for more information, like always, and that will be linked in the description box today. So if you've never played with polymer clay, you might be saying, well, what is it? This is a man-made plastic modeling product. It's made of resins and polymers, color mediums, and fillers. It stays soft until you bake it in your home oven at a relatively low temperature. It's non-toxic, although we'll talk about safety precautions later, which will you do need to be careful with it. It's easy to work with. It produces a nice durable product. It's a lot of fun. And so let's start by looking at what brands of clay I have. And I have one old package down here at the bottom because I'm not ready to buy a new box of that. So Fimo Effect. I got this one because I was out of translucent and they didn't have the translucent I wanted. This is Fimo Effect. The Effect line has some specialty type clays, including their white translucent, which I'm going to use for now until I can get some other translucent. I decided to try a package of their Craft Smart. This is a less expensive line, and usually I think it costs a little less. I think it's really soft. I think I've had one package of this before, but I don't remember much about it. I got a Sculpey Primo in white because I like to buy my translucent in this size block too. These blocks are around $3 and they are 2 ounces. An 8-ounce block is about $12 and it just lasts a lot longer. And I usually buy my translucent in this size, and I'll need to look for more translucent in this size soon. I also got a Fimo Soft. I got a Sculpey Primo. And I got a Sculpey 3. And then I have my old box of original Sculpey. So let's look at each clay individually and we'll talk about it. So we'll start with this one. So original Sculpey. It's a white or an almost white clay. It's really soft. I use this mostly where you're not going to see the clay, at least for this scale. I use it more in my 18-inch doll stuff. For the dollhouse miniatures, I use it like when we're making the cookie jars. This is the first layer. It's softer so you don't get as much detail. The firmer the clay, the more detail you can get. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But this stuff is really, really, really soft, and it is less expensive per ounce, but you buy it in bigger packages. So let me turn the camera off and we'll move to the next block. So this one is Craft Smart. Now I'm going to tell you a little secret about cutting the packages open, which I wish I would have figured out a lot earlier than I did. And once I figured it out, it was so obvious that it was like one of those oh duh moments. There's two items that you need to look for on the label before you open the package. One is, where are the baking instructions? Because different clay brands have different baking temperatures. The other is, figure out where it says what the color name is. You want to retain, if possible, the color name, the baking instructions, and the brand of clay. So since the information I want to retain on my label is here, here, and here, this package I'm going to open over on this side. I'm using a clay knife. We'll talk about the clay knife in a future video. So I'm going to slit the packaging open. I like to slit my clay packaging open to get into it. And let's get a feel, see what this stuff is like. Okay, this is really soft. Let me cut that a little more. I should have got a new clay knife yesterday too. All right, this is very soft. It's almost as soft, or possibly as soft, as the original Sculpey. I'm anxious to see how it holds up in baking and in our projects. So since it's really soft, like I said earlier, you won't get the details with it. It was, I believe, slightly less expensive. I will have prices that I paid for each block on the blog post, and I'll talk a little more about each clay on the blog post and my thoughts. But that's the Craft Smart. So let's go on to the next one. All right, this is Sculpey 3. It's, now, the information we want. The name of the clay, of the brand is here, and all the other information on Sculpey is right here. I do love that. So usually for my Sculpey packages, I cut the packaging right there. That way I can open it up really easily, and I've got good access. This one is slightly firmer than that Craft Smart, but still not very firm. It's a very soft clay. Very soft. It works up very soft, very quickly. I've used Sculpey 3 for a long time. It's a good beginner clay. It stays true to color. It holds really well. It bakes up nicely. So let's go to the next one. Then we're going to, when we get done looking at each block of clay, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the characteristics of the clay. All right, this is Primo by Sculpey, and Primo used to be a much larger part of their label, and since it's made by Sculpey, the color name and the baking information is all right there. And again, I usually cut it right here. Sculpey is slightly firmer than the Primo is slightly firmer than the Sculpey 3. As you can see, it's much firmer. It will condition down to being much softer, and we'll talk about conditioning in a video, a tutorial very soon. You can get much better detail with this because it is a firmer clay, and I love this one. This one is bronze, and I just had to see what this bronze was going to be like. I can't wait to play with this color. So let's look at the Fimo, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the clays. Okay, so this is Fimo Soft, and Fimo has other lines of clay that we might talk about on later videos that are more specialty. So Fimo Soft, it does have the temperature to bake it at right there. It's also in this long bit of printing here. I usually save this. The name of the clay is right here. This happens to be Sahara. So the Fimo, I'm going to cut it kind of across the middle. My blade is getting very dull. I'm going to have to get a new blade soon. And then I can get into it. And it even though it is their soft clay, it is very firm compared to the Sculpey products. I would put this particular block in between these two in its texture. All right, so now that they're open, what do you do with them? Well, you could wrap them in wax paper. What I usually do is put them into Ziploc sandwich bags. The clay does not seem to react with Ziploc sandwich bags, and I've never had any issues putting mine in there. Then I store those bags inside of a plastic shoebox. The ones from the dollar store work just fine, and that's a good way to store it. Do be cautious with this clay around certain plastics. It will eat through a lot of plastic. So if you use plastic tools, be sure and wipe them up before you put them away. So let's talk about, this comes in lots and lots of colors, but you can mix the colors. You can mix any of these together, and you don't have to stay brand specific. The Fimo mixes just fine with the Sculpey. The Craft Smart will mix just fine with these. They can all be mixed with the original Sculpey. If you mix two, like these, the Sculpey products are usually baked at 275, where the Fimo is baked at 230. Bake at the lower temperature and you'll be fine. So what are some of the advantages? Well, like I said, you can mix the colors. You can also color them with chalks, with pigment powders, with glitters. You can paint. After baking, you can sand them and buff them and glaze them or paint them. So you've got lots of different colors available. You can make this any color you want. It comes in metallics, it comes in glitter colors, it comes in translucent colors. The color range is incredible. There's even glow in the dark clay, which can then be mixed with other colors and give kind of a glow. It's really cool. By mixing, you can even spread your effects out even more. So you might be saying, well, how do I cure this? Well, you bake it in your home oven. The only thing, it's a few safety precautions. If you use something with your clay and the clay is touching it, you never want to use it with food again. It is non-toxic, but you still don't want to use those items for food. So if you're using a baking sheet from your kitchen, cover it really well with cardstock, aluminum foil, something. We'll talk about baking surfaces in a future video. If you're using cookie cutters, those now are clay cutters. They're not to be used for food again. It's perfectly safe to use it in your home oven. If you're worried about fumes, you can actually bake this in those Reynolds baking bags or roasting bags, whatever they're called, that the Reynolds company puts out in the US. I don't know about other countries. I will try to have a link to those in the blog post when I mention them. I've got notes over here to the side. I'm trying to make sure I get everything talked about. So you might be familiar with air dry clay. Maybe you use air dry clay and you've never used polymer clay. What are the advantages? Well, air dry clay cures by sitting out. This stuff, like I said earlier, will stay soft until you bake it. So that gives you a much longer working time. I can work on a project, leave it on my working tile. I usually work on a big ceramic tile. We'll talk about those in a future video. And I can come back tomorrow or next week and continue with the same project, where if that was an air dry clay, it would dry and I wouldn't be able to do anything with it. Once it's cured, polymer clay is much more durable than air dry clay, and it can't be rehydrated. Like a lot of times if you make something with air dry clay and it gets wet, you've lost your project. There are a lot more colors, and like I said, you can mix colors. You can get much more detail. Oh, one other thing, one other safety precaution. When you buy your clay, if you're shopping on a hot day, do not leave this in your car on a hot day. It will bake at the temperatures your car can get to on a hot day, so just keep that in mind. So I think that's all I've got for today. If you've got questions, be sure and put them in the comments below. I would love to answer specific questions in future videos. So if you have a specific concern, want to know specific things about working with polymer clay, comment in the comments so that I'll know to cover those items. Check the blog post. If you enjoy my content and haven't subscribed, be sure and subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.